Colonel Ewart was a stuffy and fussy man. He hated train travel, but he had to go to London for business and found himself on the Carlisle to London train. Fortunately, when he got on the train, the compartment was empty. That put him in a decent mood. He sat down and took off his coat and even took off his shoes, pulled out his newspaper and started to read. But the swaying of the train and the warmth of the compartment, he fell asleep. About an hour later, he awoke. He reached down to pick up the newspaper off the floor, and as he looked up, he realized he was not alone. "Oh, sorry, I thought I was alone." Young woman was clad completely in black with a heavy black veil. She was holding something in her lap covered in a dark cloth and rocking back and forth and singing a familiar tune. He couldn't quite make out the words. Colonel Ewart was curious. What did she have? What was she holding? He craned his neck to see, but he couldn't tell as she continued to rock and to murmur the lullaby. He recognized the tune, but not the words. Oh, must be a baby. Colonel Ewart hated babies. All that screaming and crying all the way to London. And then there was a great screeching sound of metal on metal as the wheels of the train ground against the rails. Colonel Ewart was pitched forward and then violently backward as the train impacted with whatever was blocking the rails. His cases fell from the overhead luggage rack, hit him on the head, and knocked him unconscious. When Colonel Ewart awoke, he put his military training into practice and got himself up and out of the compartment and down onto the siding and strode forward with great purpose, helping those along the way that he could. He was up near the engine when he remembered that woman, his fellow passenger he had left behind, and her baby. He rushed back to the compartment, searched about, but she was nowhere to be found. He went up and down the aisles and looked in other compartments, asked other passengers, and no one had seen the passenger in black as he described her. For several months after this incident, Colonel Ewart told this story to many people about the strange passenger in black, her bundle, and her disappearance. And one day, he was on the train again. A porter told him that on the same line, the Carlisle to London line, there had been an accident several years before. A newlywed couple was going to London for their honeymoon, and the husband was so excited, for he had never traveled south and wanted to see everything. And he stuck his head out the window to see the countryside, and he struck a wire. His head was severed from his body, and his body fell back into the compartment, into his young bride's lap. No one knew of the accident until they reached London, and there they found the young bride holding the headless body of her husband, rocking back and forth and singing a familiar lullaby. The shock of her husband's death caused the woman to go mad. She was committed to an institution, and several months later, she was also dead. From time to time, passengers like Colonel Ewart on the Carlisle to London line report seeing the passenger in black, holding the severed head of her husband in her lap and rocking back and forth, singing a familiar lullaby. A British ghost tale, Passenger in Black.